Here we go. So SCA disclaimer, we are recording this class and discussion. So those folks who do not wish to be on the recording, please turn off your cameras and remain muted. We will answer questions from chat in an anonymous fashion if you would so like to ask questions. With that, we will start our presentation.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll just jump into things. Yeah, we got quite a bit of material to cover, but please, chime in, at least throw something into chat and we'll respond to that. I think I know everybody actually who's online now. So basically what we did is went out and mined the MOL data for 24 and 25, and we'll talk about that in detail. And our intent was to kind of see what the trends were in fencing. There's a lot of perceptions about what's going on. But the big motivation here was to try and figure out what's working and what's not working so we could maybe point people in directions or at least identify areas that we needed to work on. So as part of that, I'm going to cover the first part of the presentation. I'm looking basically at fencer participation issues as far as, how many fencers do we actually have? Where are they? What's their rank is? And then I'll also talk a little bit about marshals, the rapier marshals. Maestro Nicolosa is going to basically look at fencer recognition as far as awards and other advancements, but looking by gender and some of the issues there with progression and overall numbers. And finally, Lord Siegfried, Max on here, was integral to getting all the data and soothing it out. We are deeply indebted to Lady Coulon, who's the Kingdom MOL, for allowing us to do this project because it's pretty much all MOL data. We do have some OP stuff that we leveraged, but we were not using event reports or anything like that. We were just mining the MOL system. And I think there's a lot of value to that. I'm trying to get the fellow deputy Earl Marshals to maybe look at their respective activities and do some things. So, oop. Oh, there is a slide before that.
Oh, was there?
Yep.
Yep.
Kind of covered this. So, well, maybe we don't need to have this slide. All right. Go ahead.
Well,
So, no, go for it. All right. So some caveats. We did the MOLs from 24 and 25. The SCA, bless it, is a volunteer organization, however, and so there are holes in the reporting. There are some significant MOL reports that have not been filed, like from Emir and defending the gate and stuff like that. We downloaded things because what we got was initially a spreadsheet of all the fighters, and there was a lot of cleanup we had to do as far as correcting names. Folks were no longer in the kingdom for various reasons. And then we went through the event reports and actually linked all the fighters to those. So we just indicated who was at events. We only looked at those who signed in as fencers. We did not do event staff. We're going to go back and do that. I mentioned stuff's missing. I will tell you that there are probably about a dozen people that I'm going to buy rubber stamps with their signatures on or their name printed out. So, because when people sign in, they sign in to the best of their ability. We didn't look at practices, and I did send a survey out, and I got about half the marshals responded, so I've got a pretty good idea of who's actually coming. In a lot of cases, those surveys I included based on the MOL report, a list of people who were in their area. In many cases, they had never even heard of the person. But we'll talk about that some more as we go along. We did not include Penzic and Gulf Wars. There's a way to do that. We're going back and forth. We'll try to clean that up in the next thing. And then we had new fencers who were authorized since the project began, and they kind of came in at a certain point. We would really love to be tracking how long somebody stays an authorized fencer. Again, that's something else. But if you authorized at any point since the project began, you're rolled into those 2 years.
Yep. And one thing that we're going to talk about in this is we're not going to have any individual names for any of this. This is all just directional information.
Yeah, we're looking at the patterns. I mean, yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
That said, I am authorized to say that Eckhart really did a lot of good stuff along with Tiberius. So, hey, they're fine with me bragging on them. So when we got the spreadsheet, there was 410 fencers on it. And these are people authorized in anything that's related or falls within my jurisdiction. So heavy rapier, light rapier, which is the old epee thing, cut and thrust and stuff like that. We focused on heavy rapier as pretty much everybody was in that. There were only 5 people who were cut and thrust only, and only 7 who were light rapier only. We determined that based on our criteria of you having attended at least one event in either 24 or 25, there are actually 217 active fencers. Again, we were missing some reports, and we didn't have Penzic and Gulf Wars and all that kind of stuff. So we think we missed a few folks there, probably a couple of dozen. But generally the active people are pretty consistent. So that said, there's about 50 to 100 people who just go to practice. I have several of those people at our local practice. A lot of that's job restraints on not being able to go out to Saturday events, or frankly, they're just getting what they need by coming to local practice. And then there's probably another 100 people who don't really fight, but they renew their authorizations. There have been some policy changes that's going to correct that. You can't just go in anymore and update it. You'll have to actually do something. So regional breakout. Can we?
Yep.
All right, we're messing with our screen here. So basically, we broke the kingdom into 3 areas. There's the Carolinas, a very obvious thing, and then there's the greater DC area, which is Maryland plus Ponte Alto. The rest of it's Virginia, and depending on who's you talk to, that's either you're in the north or south, being in Virginia. But whatever. What's interesting to me is the fact that Virginia minus Ponte Alto has the same population base as either the Carolinas or DC. So again, looking at the 27 active people, or excuse me, 217 active people, we identified where they lived in all but 27 cases. And as you can see, it's a fairly equal distribution. We broke it down by rank in this, and you get generally good as far as how many mods and stuff you have proportionally. We'll talk about some of those other trends as we go along. Just as a reference point, there were 2,152 paid SCA members in Atlantia in this period. 736 of them lived in the Carolinas, 642 in Virginia, 693 in the DC, greater DC area. 81 were in Crown Land, so we didn't include those. The number that you see there, the 11.3, 9.7, 11.7, is just the by capita, per capita, how many fencers do you have? So roughly in Virginia, 1 in 10 people, a little over 1 in 10 people is a fencer. We are the most militant of the group. Hooray for us. But there's a pretty equal distribution of ranks generally. Go ahead. Event attendance was interesting. Now, bear in mind, this is for 2 years. So if you look at it, about 30 of the folks out of the 217, actually more than that, somebody's live on their mic. Is it Jackie?
Yeah.
So I was only at Lily for 1 day on Tuesday.
Okay.
I didn't make Lily's at all.
Someone mute Jackie, because apparently I can't while I'm presenting.
Hello. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, please mute.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to get on my tablet. I can tell I messed up. Anyway, I'm on phone now, but I'm here.
Okay. Cool.
Can you mute?
Let me see. I'm trying to.
I figured out a way.
All righty. So looking at event attendance, we have 217 people, 2024, 158 were active, and 2025, 169, 217 total. And we reduced obviously the duplications and stuff like that. Roughly a third of those activities attend one event. Okay. If you attended 0 events, you didn't make the list. So a third of them do one event per year. Well, actually per the 2 years. And then the next third attend 2 events per the 2 years, or 1 event per year. So we're looking at 1.5, that should be for the 2 years. So the 50th percentile fencer attends basically less than 1 event per year. This is an area for potential growth. The flip side of that is the top 10%, the top 21 people, 22 people attend 5 or more events per year. Go ahead. So by region, looking at it, we have, again, pretty equal distribution. But if you look at it, the DC area has slightly more people with no awards. I'm sorry, slightly more attenders in the lower number of events thing. That's the big yellow kind of middle number there. The Virginia and Carolina are about the same on 1 event. Getting out towards the end, it's fairly equal distribution, although DC has lower attendance at the 5, 6, 7 events, kind of the mid-range. There's a couple of stars up in DC as far as attending other things. Go ahead. So, but lost fencers. So as I mentioned, that there were from 24 to 25, we had 46 fencers who did not come back. And that's probably a low number, again, based on the availability data and other things. However, we got 56 new fencers. So that's wonderful. Hey, Laura. Okay, sorry. Uh, so the question is, why did we lose them? Did they have a bad SCA experience? And why did we gain them? Do we have a positive one? Now, we're pretty sure if you look at the Carolina list there, the numbers are the number of events they attended. That's the left column, 1, 2, 3. So if you were a person who attended one event and didn't come back, you're in that first row. If you attended 2 events and didn't come back for whatever, and up to 5 attempts, the 5 events that we had that. So you get Carolinas, Virginia, and then greater DC. The first number is how many didn't come back. The second number is how we picked up. So one of the things I'll say is the Carolinas, they kind of lost across the board from the events attended. And the one people who attend more events tend to be the more senior fencers. And it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. We're willing to bet the hurricane had an effect on that. Virginia, hooray for us. We had a lot more people recruited than we lost. So good on us. In DC, they had a lot of people who only attended one event, didn't come back. So that's kind of a cause for looking into or something. Go ahead. Event attendance by marshals, one of my favorite subjects. So if you look at the 217 active fencers, and we went through by name, 42% of them, 91, were warranted marshals at the time that this, the time that we're looking at, 24, 25. We lost a bunch of people because of the 201 thing, well, a bunch, 16 people because of the 201 thing. But if you look at event attendance, I was surprised. I thought it would be about a third to a half of the attendees at the event were warranted marshals. Turns out the median 64%. And there are, of course, cases where you have 100% of the people at the event are marshals. And makes sense. Some of these are events where you only have like 3 or 4 people. Got it. But bear in mind, these are the people who signed in as fighters. This is not including the field staff. So these numbers actually would be a little bit higher when we put in the field staff, folks who just go and bless them, marshal for the day and they don't actually fight. So at any given event, roughly half the people there are going to be warranted marshals. And so I'm feeling really good about our representation there. Event attendance by rank. So again, looking at the columns here, we have none, which means you haven't gotten a Sea Dragon. So none of that. Then AOA, Grant of Arms, and then the peerage, the Patent of Arms.
And this is top award.
Yeah, this is top award. So you might have somebody who was a white scarf in this period and it became a mod, or more likely was a Sea Dragon in this period and became a white scarf recently. There's been a lot of white scarves recently. And the recurring trend here, by the way, is that the white scarves are doing the lion's share of the work. They typically attend more events and they typically, whatever, help out. So kind of not surprising if you're looking at no awards and stuff. The people who attend fewer events tend to be the folks who don't have awards, whereas the people who attend more events are going to be mods or white scarves. And it's actually white scarves on the top of the list. They're attending more events than the mods are. Good on them. So chicken and the egg thing, is this because people are just getting in, they're still new, they're whatever. Versus on the high end of the list, you got folks who are obviously a part of the system. They're doing this because this is their passion, so they're going to go to more events.
So addressing a question in chat, this is their award at the end of 2025. So for instance, I started this data project as a Sea Dragon. I ended as a white scarf. I count as a white scarf for the entire time. Doing the data across 2 years and tracking all of that, we decided just to make that decision. Again, we're not going for precise metrics around causation. We are just going for directionally, what can we learn? Where might we want to investigate more later?
One note about the chart is that the number, I've only attended one event by rank thing. Notice that the 55 for no award, there should actually be a red bar at the very bottom value that's 55. It would have been off. We would either had to compress all the data or have this thing go wrap around the next slide. So the number one slot, there's a big red bar for 55 that we didn't put on here just so you could read the rest of the data. So event distribution, how many people go to events? 24, 25, kind of the good news there. The median number is going up from 24 to 25. The max number kind of went down, which is weird. For that, again, bear in mind that we are missing some critical events. We're missing Amir for what, 24? We're
Yep.
missing Defending the Gate for 24.
Yep.
Um,
Holiday Fair for
holiday,
25
holiday fair for
had a
25, yeah.
large number of people, but is not on here.
Yeah. So you can see what the big events are. And then there's this nice plateau where you've got about, what, 17 people, 18 people. So that's, generally your typical events. And then there's the few biggies. From my perspective, I would recommend people hit more of those mid-level events because they generally tend to be less formal and you get a much better exposure to people and whatnot.
And notably that men, we have quite a handful of events that have 3 or 4 fighters at them. And they do tend to be more in the Carolinas.
Yeah. Yeah, when we actually going back to that, and we generally, because of the travel distances, the events in the Carolinas get fewer people, and they are, bless them, putting a whole lot more effort into getting to events. So that's another thing I encourage people to do is try and make some of those. Travel by region, speaking of which. So this is people who are crossing out of areas and what we're calling event days or trips. So the folks in Maryland, going to Maryland, they do that 63% of the time. You got Virginia going to Virginia 63% of the time, and the Carolinas to Georgia 85% of the time. One of the suggestions I had the last time we went through this was you really need to break South Carolina out from North Carolina because probably a big part of that 85 is the folks in South Carolina going to North Carolina is the same as the folks in Virginia going to whatever, one of the adjacent ones. We're kind of fortunate that we can kind of go north or south equally in a lot of ways. So you do have folks in Maryland going to the Carolinas 11% of the time versus folks in the Carolinas going to DC 2.5% of the time. But in general, the folks in the Carolinas and Georgias are making a lot more trips. They're doing 200 trips, and this is just for 25 versus 139 for Maryland, DC. Groups traveling. So hooray for Hawkwood. We're going to give them a shout out. Followed by Steerbach. Steerbach is another powerhouse as far as fencing and attendance at events. Followed by Sacred Stone. And the reason I drag this out is my wonderful Shire is 4th out of all the rest of you. So nanny. Good for us. So just interesting way of looking at stuff and seeing kind of who's going where. And this is basically the cumulative number of trips that anybody living in that area has made, regardless of destination. And the Carolinas, again, more trips. This is adding 24 and 25, but as a percentage, they're traveling more. Go ahead. Cumulative number of events. So looking at this is event days, looking at it kind of a different way. You notice that we have about 100 fencers that don't have any awards at this time, and they're doing about 206 or 2.05 per fencers. Kind of going down to the mods where you have actually them attending more events per capita at 6.5. And the White Scars, once again, are winning the fray as far as the 35 of them are doing 259 events. So travel by region. So we sat down and got the map of Atlantia off the webpage. It's in scale, by the way. And I made an appropriate measuring device and we went through and did point to point. I approximated the geometric center of a group. We made no effort to actually figure out where anybody lives or where the events were. We just assumed it was at the geometric center of wherever the organization is based on the map we have for Atlantia. Broke it down into 25-mile increments and then just kind of went from there. We then sat down and did a table, group to group travel. If you were in, say, Eisenfear and go to an Eisenfear event, you traveled 0 miles. But biggest group, I'm trying to remember what it was, like 400 or 500 miles from one end of the kingdom to the other. So at any rate, looking at how far people traveled, the total distance median For the Carolinas, 365 miles. This is just in 25. And then the average distance per event. And notice this is one way. This is not us trying to
Mhm.
reconcile the others. So generally, the folks in the Carolinas are traveling 365 miles. Generally, the folks in DC and Virginia are about half that, a little bit, actually a little less than half that. Go ahead. We then broke it out by rank. What's fascinating to me is that the DC and Carolinas are pretty much the same as far as no awards. A typical person will travel a total of 180 miles, again, one way, but the average distance to event is 130. When you get above that, you start to see some, well, the Carolina basically just kind of blows everybody away as far as how they're traveling. So Sea Dragon, it's what, three times, four times? Yeah, three times. And then come on down. The next slide's what everybody wants to see. So the White Scarves, yay! At least Virginia. Good on the White Scarves for traveling quite a bit, but Carolina's certainly holding their own and about 3 or 4 times the distance. We had folks saying that, well, the miles don't reflect what's going on in DC. So one of the things we're studying is looking at it. There are a number of different traffic sites, including National Transportation Safety Board, that will give you the average mile per hour you get, because the issue is then spending time. But it is my contention that the folks in the Carolinas are still spending more time traveling to and from events than the folks in, well, either Virginia or DC.
Right. And we're going to switch over to looking at fencer recognition, though I will do a brief foray into gender and event participation. But for fencer recognition, to understand the data, I pulled this from names and dates in the Atlantean OP through the end of 2025. My gender method identification methodology, which I acknowledge is not perfect, again, going for directional. If I was personally acquainted with someone and their gender identification, I uh, marked it as such. If I was not personally acquainted with someone, I use the title listed in the OP as a gender indicator. We'll see in a few charts where we have we have nothing. Um, I recognize that there are probably folks that I have it incorrect for if the title in the OP is not correct or I am not aware. Um, Again, looking for directional of what is going on with women and underrepresented genders. I will use gender minority and underrepresented gender interchangeably because the terminology is moving to underrepresented gender, but I still slip up. So notably, this is at event attended. So back to the first part that Joffrey was talking about. Across all of the events in 2024 and 2025, we have approximately 37.2% non-cis male attending. Note that
Signed in as a fighter.
signed in as a fighter. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, same criteria. Signed in as a fighter. Notice that note down in the bottom corner. We did find a report that did gender representation in high school sports. They only did male and female, but in the 2010s, it was around 42% were female. So uh, for non-cis male, we're at about 37%. So we, as a community, are about 5% lower than the high school sports participations. Could be many reasons for that, not something we've gone into causation for, but just setting the understanding that it's not 50-50 in general, so there may be some cultural um, items. So uh, I split this out again, still on event attendance by rank and region. You'll notice that these two percentage totals are different. This is because if we didn't know the location, I just excluded that from the numbers. If we didn't have any indication of uh, someone's gender, also excluded it. I apologize. I realize I didn't update this slide to clarify this is non-cis male. If someone has transitioned and is identifying as male, I'm left them as fully male and in this. So this is meant to be non-cis male. I know I updated other graphics. But in general, if we look at event attendance for no awards, AOA, GOA, we are either at that percentage or we are above it. So if you look at the white scarf, the GOA, of the um, of the white scarves that attended one or more events or assigned in as a fighter at one or more events, it was over 50% were non-cis males. AOAs, uh, pretty high up there, and none. Mods, we're going to hit this again. This is largely because we do not have that many uh, female and underrepresented mods. Again, this is right now we're still looking at data up through the end of 2025. And by region, this is the one that interests me, but I do not ascribe any causation to it, but would love to dive deeper about, is this cultural? Is there something we can do to be helping more folks? In the Carolinas, the percent non-cis male, 27%, Virginia a little bit better at 33%, uh, DC area up in at 53% non-cis males, so having a much higher percentage there. So if there are best practices around how do we encourage and retain non-cis males, would love to learn about maybe what the rest of us could be doing to continue this direction. I am now switching to event fencer participation. So um, there has been a lot of discussion over the last decade plus about the leaky pipeline. The premise is that women and gender minorities in Rapier Awards fall off. So the higher level you get to, the fewer percentage of women and gender minorities are there, meaning uh, there are barriers to progress and increased dropout rates for women and gender minority. Notably, it's based on the number of people who gain an award. So you would expect to see an even dropout rate, but that's not the case. Back in 2020, this fantastic set of very experienced rapier folks did a very detailed study across this. There is a paper out on the internet if you look for leaky pipeline. I also have it in the resources section, looking at this at a national level. I'm going to be looking at this from the Atlantia level. This paper gets into recruitment, training, mentorship, retention um, for women and gender minorities in the SCA. I do have an additional handout that has, University of Atlantia recordings from the uh, heavy female and gender minority heavy fighters on things that they can do to improve their recruitment and retention. And 95% of it applies to us as well. So I would encourage folks to look at that. So let's talk the leaky pipeline all time for the Atlantean Rapier. So the very top level is our Sea Dragon. This is the AOA, the first entry level award. The middle line is the White Scarf. This is our GOA grant award. And then the bottom line is the Masters of Defense. Notably, within this is the percent of non-cis males. And it is based on identity and based on award. This one I actually move up to 2026 because I do want to recognize that in 2026 we had two gender minority folks receive a mod, so it's showing a good direction. This shows a very stark Atlantia has a leaky pipeline problem. We are getting these very distinct drops. However, I also looked at the data going, it's this very interesting set of lines right here. So I said, you know what? We can't change the past, but what we can look at is current trends. So choosing fairly arbitrary 10 years. So since the beginning of 2026, how does the leaky pipeline look now? only awards given in 2016 and beyond. And now we get a different picture. The gap between Sea Dragon and White Scarf, so our AOA to GOA, is practically non-existent. We actually have a period of time in the middle there where it is the same. And then what's promising to me is that, and I do have the line here for the average event attendance, 37.2%. Sea Dragon is above it at 38.8%, and White Scarf is 36.8%. So at events over the last 2 years, our White Scarf and Sea Dragons are represented at the same amount as a event attendance. So we're doing good. Our mods, we still have a gap, but you do notice that we picked up 2 more mods this year, and so we're up to 18.9%, which is still only about half. That said, we picked up a lot of white scarves over the last handful of years. It is my personal belief that if we continue to really focus on making it a good collective experience for everybody, a healthy culture, hopefully we will see this trend of those in the white scarf move up towards mods and we will close the gap. So I think this is very promising that we are going in the correct direction. By award over all times, Sea Dragon, they've always been about the 1/3, though you do see in recent times picking up. In general, you will see um, cis males in blue and non-cis males in orange so that you can see roughly how the awards were presented. White Scarf, this is actually what originally drove me to what looking at, okay, just the last 10 years. I was not involved in Rapier during, I'm going to say 2012, 2013. Something very positive happened. Culture changed, something good. We were recruiting more, we were retaining better. We see this continual upward climb of this. So again, these are hopefully healthy culture items that happened. Let's keep that trend going upwards. Master of Defense, again, over all time, we do see it climbing upward. There's fewer of them. And again, we did recognize 2 this year, so double of any prior year. Here's the spicy one that is a little uncomfortable to sit with. I also looked at how long it took between awards, so between Sea Dragon to White Scarf and White Scarf to Mod. Notably, I chose to use the data only for folks who got their White Scarf after 2016. The reason for this is I will point at Master Joffrey, who got his White Scarf in 1996 because there was no mod, and then got his mod 20 some years later. That was going to be throwing us off. There were a lot of people who got white scarves in the 90s and early 2000s that it just made the data very messy because of the non-existence of mods. So I chose to do it for people who got white scarf after 2016 to match those other charts of we're making progress, but then also to match to take out that little bit of data weirdness. All right, oops. Sorry, I was looking at a comment. So I did both average and median years. Sorry, taking a yeah, there was also non-existence of the Sea Dragon during much of that earlier time, so choosing to look at the last 10 years. I'm a math nerd. I like to know the difference between average and median. So average is take all of the values together, just do a pure across the board. Median is find the middle part, the middle value in the set. I'm putting them both on here because they're close, but they tell slightly different stories. And then the count is how many people were in that sample size. So the uncomfortable story is it takes about 50% longer in whatever version of these numbers for women and gender minorities to be recognized. Not ascribing anything to that, but it is something that we should sit with and look at, is it a recognition issue? Is it a retention issue? Is it a uh, unconscious bias issue? Similarly, in the resources I'll send out after class, there are some papers on what both coaches, teachers, and individuals can do to check their biases when training folks, but also when writing in recommendations. So, don't know why this happened, but it is an uncomfortable truth that we should sit with. And as someone who's been in this realm, a whole bunch of us knew it, but it was very different to see the data and have it confirmed. So, follow-on actions.
So this process is ongoing. Siegfried, of course, has been trying to get more and more of the MOL reports loaded. We're kind of going through cleaning data. We are interested if you have any questions that you want dived into. We've come up with a couple of things, trying to break out more. Going back to 23, we're not going to go any earlier than that. I mean, we might look at 18 and 19, but the impact of COVID is going to be a thing. And then, yeah, add the authorizations. It'd be interesting to track how long somebody's actually been doing this. Although some of them are going to be pretty old, but yeah, go ahead. We really want just get out and travel more, folks, particularly get out of your region. Find an event that's on the other side of the kingdom that's, kind of a mid-level event. Go down there and hang out. It's odds are you'll meet some nice people and have a good time. And then if you're going to interkingdom events, i.e. Penzic, please practice beforehand. Go to at least one event. I've got folks that are probably part of that 400 who just fight at Penzic, and ideally they're going to fencing practice ahead of time, but who knows? If you're getting authorized, set up an AEL account. Of course, you guys are all authorized, but let your fighters know that the MOLs track things through AEL. So if you have a new fighter who's going to be, authorizing, get them to set up an account. Please help the MOL or make the reports legible and filed. Be nice to your MOLs. And if you are the RMIC or one of the marshals there, please take a picture of the sign-in list so that we have that just in case the report is delayed in getting published. That's my nice way. Yeah. And then, yeah, write in recommendations. Goodness sakes, let the crowd know what you're thinking, who's doing great stuff. I'm a fan. Way back when we used to do rapier only events, we had once a year we do the academy, and we'd all sit down and just do nothing but fence and chat and hang out and stuff. Yep, folks in the Carolinas work harder. I'm pretty sure I've documented that. If you notice proportionally, there's more senior fencers relatively in the north. Although the folks in the south will be quick to point out that several of those were people who grew up in the Carolinas and then moved north. Do we need to have events that only get few fencers? For some shires, particularly out in the south, that's the only event they have. And so ideally they're trying to draw people in, but really are we getting overloaded by fencing events is kind of the thing. And then, yeah, we would be very interested in success stories that people have had, or frankly, failures that people have had, so that we can keep doing this best practices sort of discussion that we've started. How do you recruit people? How do you keep them? What have been epic fails? So,
One of the big drop-offs we see is, a third of the fencers, one event in over 2 years, another third, 2 to 3 events over 2 years. What do we need to do to get folks
yeah.
beyond just coming to their authorization? What can we do as a community? So, posted on the Rapier email list. Notably, we have an email list, Discord, and Facebook group. Happy to send those out afterwards as well. Use the communication tool of your choice. We had a conversation at Gem Joust of what would make this more fun? What would make folks come back more? And a lot of it is stuff we as individuals can do, helping people get to events, helping people feel comfortable doing pickup. So looking at retention that way, I know I spoke a lot about women and gender minorities. Making things better for women and gender minorities actually makes it better for everybody, for all factors. So, when you read some of these follow-up papers, which I encourage you to do, think about it in the broader context.
And
No,
I'll say, no, go ahead.
no,
You can go to the screen view. So
yeah,
thank you all for, basically your interest in this and participation. I will take that as you're personally very interested in the Rapier community, and I thank you for that as somebody who cares about that community. But this is our community. It's all of ours. So if you got ideas, or you got things you want to do them, get with folks, make good things happen.
yeah. So we
Right.
have about 8 minutes left. I would love to open it up for Q&A. Um, I'm going to leave, if folks are comfortable, I'll leave the recording on. If you would like me to edit out the question ahead of the recording or ahead of posting the recording, just tell me and I got this. Lachlan.
Yeah, on one of your slides, you had statistics of the groups. For example, I think Ravens Cove had a 58-day over
Mhm.
the spread. Have you thought about breaking that down in the fact that in Ravens Cove, there's 4 fencers? So 58 days over 2 years for 4 fencers is a high
Mm.
percentage for that group. But have you thought about looking at that statistic across the board?
That would be interesting. We do have some superstars as far as folks attending events, but yeah, we can break it out that way. All right.
Thank you. I thought the information was really good.
Thank you.
And I'm going to jump out because I have to get permission so that I can run this room next.
Fantastic. Any other questions, commentary, thoughts? Was there anything that surprised you?
Hmm.
It does surprise me a little bit how few from my perspective events people are going to, because I've lived in Ansteora and the Outlands where the kingdom's really, really big comparatively. Like,
Yep.
um, and so when it's saying, oh, some of these places, the average they're having to travel is like 60 miles, 100 miles. I'm like, that sounds wonderful. And it's like, and they're going to 3 events a year. And I'm like, what? So it's interesting. Like, it's not the data you guys were looking at, but
Mhm.
it is interesting to me that there is not a correlation between having a smaller travel space and people going to every event. Because I would assume there would have been, because generally that's why I have not gone to every event, is sometimes those events were 14 hours away from like Oklahoma to far Texas or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and I will note we had about 75% of the event reports. So, maybe all of those bump up by one or two, but it was still surprising to me as well on the amount of drop off we have, which is why I would love to continue the discussions of how do we get folks to come to events? How do we retain folks? And that I think is largely on individuals feeling welcome and feeling like there's interesting things at the events to go to. So that's my personal view. Happy for other challenging ideas. The 1 out of 3, one event is surprising. Yes, correct. Yeah, fencers may absolutely be active in other things. For
Mhm.
instance, this university session, because we're not actually fencing, there's no MOL, doesn't count on the report, but all of you are active. That would be a great thing to look at. I am not going down the direction of trying to gather event attendance overall. It is really, we're trying to just contain to this scope. Yeah, it's absolutely hard to count.
Yeah. So one of the things, I mean, looking at a SCA group, one of my beliefs is that, we nominally our Shire has 50 people who are paid members. You'll never see more than half of them at anything. And they're happy. I mean, they're getting what they want, just doing local stuff, and they don't travel. Realistically, maybe a quarter of the population of the group actually goes to events. So I've got 20 authorized fencers, and then again, because some of them work Saturdays, things like that, you're never going to see everybody. It's just kind of reality.
Yeah.
So,
Other thoughts, questions, suggestions on how do we retain people? How do we recognize people?
I know I don't see them in this room, so I don't mind talking about them. Two people that are attached to me, um, I've made recommendations for, and one of them is not a court attendee. They
Mhm.
specifically avoid court. Um, so by knowing that in my recommendation, I was able to ask the Crowns for that to be a field side award.
Mm.
And they're happy to comply with that if you make that request known.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and use the ESP, put notes in, put your name in as a contact. As someone who is the contact for a lot of folks, I end up getting contacted by the court secretary. If you just put a note in the reward recommendation, makes everyone's lives easier. Question in chat: how are we comparing to other kingdoms at this point? So there is on the Women or Lady Rapier Facebook group, and which also now has a Discord for women and gender minorities in martial arts within the SCA. Again, I can send those out. Um, they're doing a quote unquote road to 20. How do we get to 20% women and gender minorities? Atlantia's in, I think, the bottom quarter. We're not doing great, honestly.
That's for the mods.
For the mods, that is
The
correct,
mods, yeah.
because it would be on a basically other people would need to, nerd out with the data to get their progression through, but it is noted that the mods are low, and I think Atlantia is now at 15%. And ideally, we get to the 37%, with event attendance. Right now, just trying to get to 20%. Another question, what do you think the future of this project will look like as it diversifies? Diversifies in the data or diversifies? I'm not sure it diversifies. Feel free to put in chat or speak up. In the scope of data. Um, for one, we're we're trying really hard to get all of the data in 2026 because I think that will answer a lot of questions in terms of what retention factors look like because we will have a better sense from 25 to 26 of who we lost within that.
Yeah, and along the lines of lost, who we gained, because so one of the things is that Steerbach is definitely shining as far as recruiting
Mhm.
folks. So it's like, all right, what are they doing different than everybody else? Is it just because they happen to be in an environment that's permissive for that? They've got a lot of colleges in the area and stuff. But yeah, what we want to do is really kind of dig more into causality versus, yeah, here's the numbers.
Causality and keep the conversations going of, okay, maybe let's do experiments within the groups. If people start setting up carpools, does that increase that group going to places? So looking for ways to share good ideas. Um, so correlation between number of events and time. Uh, yes, I think that would be, I mean, we have all the data for or we have a lot of data for which events the people attended and when they got their awards. We could do that. I do think we would need uh, a little bit more headway, 3, 4 years, just in terms of it taking a
Yeah.
while and seeing what it does. That said, anecdotally, looking at it as we were doing this, starting in beginning of 2025, I did notice that the people we had in the No Awards that attended a lot of events were more likely to go get Sea Dragon. Um, I will also note that for a couple of our local folks, we are choosing not to put them in for Sea Dragon until after Penzic Novice because Penzic Novice tourney is so fun. So skewing data, we're doing it with their permission, to be clear. Um, so I don't know if that skews anything, but yes, would love to do that. All right, we are 1 minute over time, so thank you all. If you are signed up as a student in this class, I will be sending out these materials afterwards. If you are not signed up as a student, you can still do so through tomorrow and when I will send this out, or feel free to reach out to me on any, email, Facebook, Discord. I'm on all the things.
Right. Great to see you guys. Yeah, please let us know what you think or what ideas you have.
Yep. Thank you all.